Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, it's a Super Deluxe Definitive Edition remaster. I can restore your life, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society restores your life with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. This will be releasing in a post-Switch 2 pre-order world. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it all worked out great for all of us.
I hope it all. And look, it is releasing in a post that, but a pre-GameStop releases their.
Yeah,
pre-order
you're
world.
right.
So
oh my gosh, we're like in this window where anything could still be happening.
yeah, it's Schrodinger's pre-order is what it is. Both you have the pre-order lockdown, and you will never get a pre-order.
Yep.
And you won't. It won't. The state of it won't be decided.
It's like
until
the
you
fever
check
dream
on it.
I had all week.
That's yes, that's right. I keep having a not a dream, but like a sleep or waking sensation that I am not in my bed, that I am somewhere else, and that I need to figure out how to get back to my bed before I can wake up.
That sounds horrible.
It's okay because I do just wake up, and then I'm like, no, I'm definitely in my bed. But there's a moment there where I feel like lost, or where I like,
and it's
need
like
to-
recurring.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Well, come on my other podcast, the Mark's Dream Reality Reading.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we got there.
Mark's Dream Reality Reading.
And I'll tell you more about what that possibly could mean.
You know, I was going to be mad that you were doing a podcast without me,
But it doesn't
but then I
sound
heard the
that
title.
good.
I was like, I'll pass. If you would like to support us on this podcast, you can go on over to patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, where if you are supporting us at the 8 or 16-bit levels, you can get access to our once-a-month episodes of miniseries that we're putting out over there, like NCS Arcade.
Yes, for the month of April, Patrick and I are going to be playing Okami.
Yes, we are currently playing Okami.
That's right.
Not currently, but like we're both in the midst of playthroughs.
Yes, that's right. And so we will be talking about that soon, and that's going to be a lot of fun. It is something that is, I feel like, loomed large in my gaming wall of shame. Like, I feel like this is something that I'm glad to finally be tackling.
Yes, I'm glad to be tackling it too, because like it's kind of two things, right? It is a Zelda-like that I've never played, and I like Zelda-likes, and it's a big like Capcom series too. I mean, maybe not like it hasn't like persisted into the modern day as much.
I would say,
but
I mean, like for. Because I didn't have a PlayStation 2 when Okami first came out.
You had a GameCube though, and it came out for that the next year.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't think it. Yeah, I didn't realize that. But yeah, I remember this is one that my perception of it is that for gamers of a certain age, meaning ours mostly, that this is like a kind of like big deal because Clover Studios existed, and it was,
right.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, we'll obviously get into it more.
We'll talk about it a bunch.
Yeah.
But you got to be subscribed to the Patreon in order to hear that conversation. We will be doing a listener feedback episode that'll be free to everyone who follows us at any level on Patreon, including the free level. So if you have questions or thoughts or comments about Okami, and if you thought it was a big deal because you're a gamer of a certain age, I'm not talking about Tim Allen here. That was the name of his show, right? Men of a Certain Age?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Okay, sure. I don't know. But I believe you.
Look, he had Home Improvement, right? And then, maybe he also had Last Man Standing.
Yes, yes.
So maybe Men of a Certain Age is someone else.
Is that the one that was Ray Romano?
It might be a Ray Romano show, yeah. And now Tim Allen is on Shifting Gears.
Yes.
With Kat Dennings.
Yes.
And that show is bad.
I will take your word for it.
I watched an episode and a half, and I did not care for it. What are we talking about?
I was gonna interpret your dreams for you.
Oh no, I don't think that's right. That sounds like a different podcast
with a great catchy title.
Mark's Dream Reality Reading. I think, yeah. I like it a little bit more. If you have those things, those remembrances of Okami, email us Nintendo Cartridge Society
At
gmail.com,
gmail.com.
and we will use those emails in our episode. Responding to listener feedback. Also, emailing us, you should be doing, speaking like Yoda now for no reason, because we are approaching our 866th episode, which means it's time for another whole episode of 433 segments where we are talking about not at all Nintendo-y stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So if there's ever been a question that you wanted to ask Patrick and I that was not Nintendo related, now is your chance to do it. You want to find out how we take our breakfast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Mark could
Our
keep
social
coming
security
up
number. That's right. That's right. Our favorite things to list. This would be the perfect time for you to ask that.
I gotta say, probably in my top 5 things to list would be ways I like my breakfast. Email us those because we've got a couple weeks still before the 866th episode, but it is never too early to get those suggestions in. Thank you to everyone who sent them in already. Also, you should be in our Discord. Email us and we'll send you an invitation. You can hop in there. Mark, we've got some Nintendo glossary terms, Nintendo title glossary terms to define.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. And Mark, this for me really kicked off with 2 recent things that are in the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 zeitgeist right now. One is the fact that Mario Kart, the new Mario Kart game, is not a numbered entry in the series, which very few of them are, but that it has a subtitle which is a subtitle which tells us something about what it is in relationship to the other games in the Nintendo Pantheon just by the single use of the word world.
Right.
And that word world on a Nintendo game means something specific.
Yeah, it like promises something almost.
It promises something. So we were like, okay, what exactly does that promise? Let's put that aside. We can talk about that in a little bit. What does world mean when it's on the end of a Nintendo game? So that's thing number 1. Thing number 2 is that, Nintendo is sort of like the king of confusing terminology being tacked onto the ends of products. What in the heck is a sound clock? But we're seeing all of these games that are being re-released on the Switch 2 with upgrades and expansions specifically for the Switch 2. And those are all being called Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, right?
Right.
So, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. And it got me thinking about how frequently Nintendo will name entries in their most famous series by the platform that they appear on. And outside of a very narrow window in the late Genesis era, when Sega had the 32X and the Sega CD, no one else does this, right? Like, yes, you will get 32X games that are called whatever 32X and Sonic CD. There are CD games for sure. But like Nintendo, for almost literally every generation, every platform will name a game something that has the name of the system in the title.
Right.
Bizarre.
But they are the it is interesting that is just like Nintendo territory.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that like in some ways the brand of the games is the hardware.
Yeah.
Right. And some of that gets a little conflated, like in North America, especially like early on when I don't think there are any games called Nintendo Entertainment System something.
I don't think so.
Obviously later we'll get to like NES Remix and Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. But like the NES at that point was just the Nintendo anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there are games named after Famicom. So
right.
It's there's a lot there. And then I think Game Boy also doesn't really get its own signifier. But regardless, we're going to go through kind of all of these terms and figure out what games they apply to and what we think it says about a game. If a new game were to come out tomorrow with this word
right.
in its subtitle, what do we think that means about it?
Yep.
So there are a handful that are just sort of commonly used around the gaming industry that Nintendo also uses sometimes, right?
Yes.
What these are remaster or remastered, HD, which is of course going out of fashion now because they're remaking games that were originally HD, but whatever, and definitive edition. And Mark, you want to run down like what those games are that bear those subtitles?
Well, so for like remaster or remastered, you have like Metroid Prime remastered,
Right.
and then you contrast that with something like The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD or Wind Waker HD or Skyward Sword HD. Zelda got a lot of these.
Zelda got them exclusively. No one else got game titles from Nintendo with an HD.
I don't think that's true. I think Luigi's Mansion 2 is HD.
Oh, great point. What a
Yeah.
great point. Yes, thank you.
And then there's also like definitive editions, which like Xenoblade
Right.
saw a couple of these, like Xenoblade Chronicles definitive edition on the Switch, and then like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 definitive edition as well.
I had forgotten about Luigi's Mansion 2. But otherwise, it's interesting that like the examples that are using these terms that are sort of like agreed upon by the rest of the gaming industry are all the sort of like Nintendo grown-up games,
Right.
like that are like serious gamer games that like target a demographic that is going to be like plugged into what games are already.
And it's also interesting to see like, like what are the differences, because even within something like HD, I feel like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD and maybe even Skyward Sword HD is a different sort of thing from Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Do you agree with that or
I
not?
do.
Because I feel like
Yes.
really what I'm saying is I think that the Zelda versions had a little more like effort put into them.
Totally.
Versus
I think they probably should have been called remastered because in all three of those games, it takes some of the like extra collecty nonsense of those games and cuts it out, right? Like the end of Wind Waker with the Triforce Shard collection, that quest is trimmed down a bit. In Twilight Princess, you don't have to get as many of the like tier seeds
Right,
like filled up. And Skyward Sword, there was another thing that you just had to collect fewer of, making the games like easier to fit, or not easier necessarily, but just like less annoying to finish.
But I feel like the way that Nintendo seems to use them, well, let's take an example like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door that was released on Switch.
Sure.
That did not get an additional moniker, and I think it goes back to what you were saying about the audience, where it's like the audience for Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door is different from like that's more of a like general audience title. Like it will be new to somebody, whereas these like remaster, HD, and definitive edition feels like a for fans type of like positioning. But it's interesting to see like what is the difference between Metroid Prime remastered versus what they did for Zelda, because a lot of work, like a lot was redone for Metroid Prime, but mostly in like textures and graphics. Not, at least to my knowledge, not really like a lot of like gameplay nips or tucks or anything.
Right. There's no like editorial changes there.
Right.
Yeah. No, it is interesting, and I feel like they almost use them interchangeably. Mark, you have added both Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. I had forgotten that that's what they call it on the Switch. Quick pointing out that most of these are Switch games.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Obviously not Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, but what are you gonna do? But Donkey Kong Country Returns, we will also see in the 3D category later on in this conversation. So like in some ways, I think they just needed a word for or a couple different words for Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Edition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously with Switch 2, they're just like, whatever, just call it Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. It was HD to begin with, so you can't call it HD. Maybe it's remastered, but like, you're not going to sell a Mario Party remastered. That's insane.
But yeah, I think you're right that it is just like we need another way to say that this version is for
Is the new one for the new thing.
yes, is the new one for the new thing.
Yeah.
And I guess for something like Xenoblade Chronicles, like the other piece of like the definitive editionness of it, especially I guess at least with like X, is that in that case they did I think it includes like any like additional characters and like all that
Right,
kind of
anything that
stuff.
was added to
Uh-huh.
it. Yeah, well, and that's true. You added here Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, which is a great call out. Which is again like all of the DLC and like characters that were added to the original release on Wii U now just like totally collected together.
Like so HD is the one that throws me a little bit because I would say the levels are listed appropriately where it's like remaster is Nintendo saying this is our lightest touch.
Yes.
Like Metroid Prime Remastered was $40 in America. Like it was kind of treated as a
Right.
like this is our lightest touching of this.
Which is crazy because like I think it's just a matter of like upgrading the lighting and textures, but that game looks so much better than the original.
Totally.
Which is a beautiful game to begin with, but
and then there's HD where I get confused because you have the Zelda HD versions, which
Right.
I think are more than just like they go in and they make changes and like the we've discussed previously. Plus, like they improved the graphics and all that sort of thing, right? They
Right.
made them HD.
Do you think they don't call those definitive editions because they don't consider them the final words on those games? And
Interesting.
something like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, that's the third time that they released that game, right? But will it be the last?
And also, I would say like to my mind, these HD versions they don't include any additional content. It's not like they,
I see
you
what
know,
you're
like
saying.
they're
Yeah.
not bundling DLC. They're not doing anything like that. But where I think that
No, but they are bundling DLC, but they're not adding like there's not more DLC onto it, right?
well, what in Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, or Skyward Sword are they bundling?
Right, nothing.
Exactly. That's why I
Yes,
think they're
yeah.
HD and not definitive.
I see what
edition.
you're saying. Yes, okay.
And then, but Luigi's Mansion 2 and Donkey Kong Country Returns, maybe this is just my skewed perspective on it, but I think that these should go into the remastered camp.
Yes.
Like more appropriately than HD, but maybe it's just too wordy. And so that's why they're like, these are HD.
Yeah, what's interesting is like Donkey Kong Country Returns should be definitive edition because it does take the best parts of the 3D
right.
remake and the original Wii release. So like that should be considered like the definitive or like the ultimate way to play the game.
Yeah.
But Luigi's Mansion 2, like HD, I guess is like a point of distinction that like it was not HD in its original release. That should really be the only one that should be called HD. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, so and worth noting that obviously with all of these titles or all of these terms, remastered, HD, and definitive edition, these are re-releases, right?
Right.
Every single time. If you see one of these terms, you know that the game has been released on a platform previously. We will see some of that same kind of stuff with terms as we go on, but it is also not always the case. All right. So the next category here is where terms in the title reference the console itself. And I was talking about this a little bit up top. Seems like a thing that basically only Nintendo does. What a wild and crazy thing that I love them for.
Yeah. And then we're just like, we're so used to it that we're just like, oh yeah, of course.
Of course, yeah. We don't even think about it.
Of course it's Mario Kart Wii.
Right. What a great example. Let's start at the beginning with the Famicom. And, because we called it the NES in North America and, in Europe and stuff, that these games don't either appear as Famicom blank games here or they did, but 30 years later. So the example of the 30 years later is Famicom Detective Club. Crazy that that's the name of that game.
Yeah, very funny that in North America, when they finally brought them over here, it's just like, yeah, Famicom Detective Club is just the series.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of weird that in Japan it was named that, right?
Yeah.
That they like had a new like concept, a new game concept, and like no real IP to hang it on, and they were just like, I don't know, just call it Famicom Detective Club.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But
And is that, I mean, I guess like we don't have a timeline of all the games that included Famicom in the title, but but you're right. It's interesting that from the very beginning, this was something they decided to do, where it's just like we're
Right.
putting the name of the console in the like the title of the series or the title of the game.
Right. Well, and so the second example here is Famicom Wars, which the series that we know as Advance Wars in outside of Japan started on the Famicom in Japan, and they just called it Famicom Wars. It's a war game, and they were like, I don't know, just call it it's the war game you play on the Famicom. It's Famicom Wars. What do you want?
Yeah, it's not Wars.
Right.
It's Famicom
It's
Wars.
Famicom Wars.
Yeah.
This is a war that you play on your family computer.
Yes.
So a fascinating like bit of and obviously now like Advance Wars has sort of become the name of the series, but because we were introduced to it on the Game Boy Advance. So
But yeah, because these are the first ones, because Famicom is the first time that they started this pattern, I feel like Famicom as a modifier to the game title doesn't tell us anything about it in a way
Right.
that maybe some of the later ones do.
right. Well, and there also just aren't that many examples of it. Right?
Yeah.
Especially for game titles that have persisted in outside of Japan.
If anybody can think of or knows of an example where like Nintendo Entertainment System is part of the title in the same way that like Famicom
Right.
Wars or
But of an NES game.
yes, I would
Right.
love to. I would love to know.
Email us. You know how to do that. Moving on to the Super Nintendo era, we get the word Super itself, which has a complicated thing because they started using Super before the Super NES, before the Super Nintendo Entertainment System / Super Famicom with the Super Mario Brothers series.
Which is interesting because it kind of means the same thing.
I agree.
Because, you had Mario Brothers, the arcade title,
Mhm.
and then when it became a platforming series, it became Super Mario Brothers. And I feel like when the term is referencing the console, it is kind of saying the same thing. It's like, here is the improved, like the better, the best version of the
Right.
super version
Yes.
of this thing that you know previously.
And this is something that we've talked about a lot with the with just Super NES games in general, that in a lot of ways it feels like the ultimate realization of what they were trying to do in 8-bit, finally able to genuinely achieve it in 16-bit, right? We feel that way about like Metroid, about Zelda, about Mario World, that like, yeah, this is it. This is what they were trying to do all along. And it's amazing how much it spread to the third parties. Super Castlevania 4,
Right.
Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Like, do you just like you put that super on everything because the upgrade from NES to Super NES was like that was the brand of the thing.
And it's interesting that, it's not like the modern terminology for, I don't know, like I guess like with something like Castlevania as an example,
Yes.
it is it's not like
It's an outlier. Yeah.
it's not like we took the Castlevania for the NES and redid it in 16-bit graphics,
Right.
right? It's not like an All Stars or something,
Right.
It's
That is never what super means.
right. It means like, hey, we took like the ideas
right
of
and
what we
made a
were
better
doing
game.
and then made it like
Yeah.
we've brought it so much further this time.
Yeah, and I think that's it's so fascinating that's what that is.
It's also interesting because like an example where I think it doesn't exactly fit that is when they introduce a new series like Super Mario Kart. And at that point, it just means this is Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo.
Well, so things get complicated when the word Mario is coupled with super, because we reach a point where like the character just is Super Mario, right? Like Super Mario 64 isn't an enhanced version of Mario 64.
But that's what I mean. But I agree with you, it gets complicated. But I think Super Mario is the outlier because it's like a Super Mario game is a platforming game in most instances because it's not Super Mario Kart World. It's not Super Mario Kart Wii. It's just like Mario Tennis, Mario Kart Wii.
Right.
But then you get something like where it goes from Mario Party to in the Switch
Super
generation.
Mario
They're
Party.
just like, hey, this is Super Mario Party. And what is that trying to tell us? Like, was Super Mario Party, I'm not that familiar with the Mario Party series, was it a reinvention of Mario Party? Like,
In some
an
ways,
enhancement?
but in other ways, it's also a return to form, right? Like the Mario Party series had gotten so kind of like convoluted and weird in the way that it was presenting itself. I think it's generally accepted that like the first 2 or 3 Mario Party games are good, and then they get worse until the Switch. And then your mileage may vary, but like I think just about everyone has a Mario Party on Switch that they think is good if they're into the series at all. But there are 3 Mario Party games on Switch, and only 2 of them are called Super Mario Party.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe they felt like it was because what was the first one on Switch before
the Super Mario Party.
Oh, but
and then there was Mario Party Superstars.
Oh, okay.
And then Super Mario Party Jamboree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not really sure what they were doing there, other than just saying, "Hey, this isn't the Mario Party you remembered. Like, we're shaking things up a little bit."
I guess
it's a Super Mario Party.
It is a Super Mario Party. So yeah, I think whenever it is paired with Mario, that there's like something. I don't know. I feel like that some of that just becomes like part of the colloquial.
It would, yes. I would just be really interested to know what they intended with Super Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Is it Super Mario Kart? Or is it Super Mario Kart? What was the intention behind it?
Yeah, I agree, and it's like kind of impenetrable. There are 2 other super things that I want to talk about. Smash Brothers.
I feel like that's just like playing on the Mario thing.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
And then Super Princess Peach. The
game is unknowable.
Yeah.
The why of it all. But actually, maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it is, the idea anyways is like following in that same vein, where it's like now Princess Peach is in a platformer.
You're right.
So
yes.
So it's Super Princess Peach.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe.
No, I mean, I do think that she's like leveled up in some way.
Right.
All right. So super, kind of a mixed bag. Hard to know what it means.
I feel like it just has multiple meanings.
Let's continue on this on this track with something where it's like so painfully obvious what it means, and it's 64.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I had never really considered this, like, because you heard the announced name for the Nintendo 64, and eventually it becomes Nintendo 64, but originally it's the Ultra 64.
Yes.
And laying it out like this is very obvious that they were like Famicom or NES to Super NES to Ultra NES. You know what I mean?
Right,
like to Ultra Nintendo. I had never really thought about it that way. So do you think in a world where Ultra 64 was the actual title and not the Nintendo 64, that instead of being Pilot Wings 64 or Excitebike 64, we would have had Pilot Wings Ultra and Star Fox Ultra, or like Ultra Star Fox?
Yeah.
You know, like, do you think that would have been the naming convention instead of putting 64 on everything?
I mean, it's totally possible, and that almost seems like a nicer world. There's something so, I mean, first of all, naming systems, or like being so obsessed with the like bits that like once you get to 64 bits, what you're describing doesn't matter. Right? Because it's all about like how many polygons it can process.
It was like, funny. It was to be like, as a kid, I was so obsessed with bits, had no idea what it meant. Like no real concept. I just knew that more was better.
You just know that more is better. You know that the NES was 8, Super NES was 16, Genesis was also 16, but it had a 32X, which was 32.
Couldn't wait for the Nintendo 128.
Right, which of course would never come because by that point the fever had broken and people knew they were waking up in their own beds. So 64 very specifically means made for the Nintendo 64.
Yeah,
and
totally.
You can infer it also means was an early crack at a 3D version of this game.
Yeah,
of this series.
Yeah, they would it's interesting that they would return to this later. Like not the 64 part, but where they're just like, yeah, we're just kind of like throwing on the most identifiable part
Yes.
of so there's no question what system this is for.
Right.
Like, but yeah, I'm so used to the titles just being like Star Fox 64, and it's easy to remember the name, and when you're talking to somebody about it, identify which one you're
Yeah.
referring to. But
as those games get re-released, it becomes ridiculous, right? That like we'll talk about 3D in a little bit here, but Star Fox 64 3D is a stupid name for a game. Super Mario 64 DS, a bad name for a game.
Well, even like Star Fox 64 in and of itself, I would say a bad name for a game.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm just so used to it.
We're used to it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Should we move on to advance here?
Yeah, yeah.
So, as we're kind of like skipping through time here, obviously we are bypassing the Virtual Boy, which like they didn't really play with the word like virtual in any of those game titles, and there's no sort of like unifying game title thing in Virtual Boy, which is interesting. So then moving on to the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube. GameCube, I don't think there are any Nintendo games called whatever GameCube.
Yeah, I can't think of any either.
They got kind of nuts with subtitles there, right? They were like, this one's Double Dash, you know?
Right. Super Mario Sunshine.
Right. Yes, exactly. But Advance, holy cow.
You want your Super Mario to be advanced? Oh, we got you covered.
Right. And this will still be the same games that you've already played elsewhere. So in some ways, hold on, I want to just like check this in my head. So the Super Mario Advance series is maybe a little bit of an outlier because it is a re-release of games, but now on the Game Boy Advance, right? Whereas we get a lot of games like Advance Wars, which we had mentioned earlier as Famicom Wars, Mario Golf Advance Tour, Mario Party Advance, where those are brand new games in the series just for the Game Boy Advance.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of two different tracks of things happening there.
Yep.
And interesting that Square Enix did this a lot too. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Final Fantasy 4 Advance, 5 Advance, and 6 Advance. They were just like, yeah, whatever. We'll just re-release our games with the word Advance on the end of the title.
Yeah.
But generally, I think it mostly just... So, two things. Remake for the Advance system and just the entry that goes on the Advance system.
Right. But also one where, like, Nintendo didn't always...
Didn't always do it.
Yeah, like, it's not Mario Kart Advance.
It's Mario Kart Super Circuit.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah. So...
which is that super again.
Yeah, right. And in that context, what does it mean?
I don't know.
I don't know that it means anything other than just being a name that they want to give it.
I think that's right. Which again is where I think Mario Kart World is really distinguishing itself.
Yes, I agree.
Doing something that like nothing else, none of the other subtitles are doing. Moving along to the DS, and this is, this is where Nintendo and every third-party developer started to get like too cute with it. But generally speaking, DS just means the DS entry in this series, though again can sometimes be this is the remake for the DS.
But this is the one where to me feels almost like the most Nintendo 64-ish, where they're just like, yep, it's Mario Kart DS. It's
it's Mario Party DS.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. And the remake category there is something like, we already mentioned it, Super Mario 64 DS and Diddy Kong Racing DS. Really no taking no like sort of effort to call these like remasters or remakes, even though they both add a ton of content and change a bunch of things. Which like is kind of perplexing that they would go through the trouble of changing these things so much and still just like give them the same title but with DS on the end.
Yeah, I feel like that, but at this point we're talking like 2004, 2005-ish.
Sure.
Like I guess on the DS all the way up to the early 2010s, like the idea of a remaster didn't exist yet. Like the idea of you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Like
well, especially when you think about that, like Game Boy Advance would just put out like NES classics as just like themselves.
Right. And there really wasn't this idea of like industry wide of re-releasing old games on new hardware.
Right.
Like that wasn't really a thing. And so when Nintendo would bring over something like Super Mario 64, previous to this, there was no expectation that we'd be able to like play Mario 64 on a new system again.
No, that's true. Because like when you're playing Mario 64, like for the first time, PlayStation is incredibly new on the market with the original PlayStation 1. Xbox doesn't exist yet. Sega is dying. Like any concept of backwards compatibility doesn't make sense because the only players in the game are either at the end of their life or the beginning. So there's no library to carry forward and no place to carry the library forward to, except for Nintendo. So they're making up the language as they go along.
Right. And there was no like HD in anything.
Right.
You know, like it was, yeah.
Certainly not on the DS.
You haven't you mentioned it, but you haven't pointed out here that a lot of third parties, they didn't directly call their entries
Yes.
DS. It wasn't like Resident Evil DS. They got cute with the naming.
Right.
So it would be like Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. They would get that DS in there.
Right. And even first party games, Advance Wars Dual Strike, Dig Dug Digging Strike, Resident Evil Deadly Silence, and the list goes on like this forever. Because it's just like that was the way to do it. Sneak that DS in there.
Yep.
All right. And then let's move on to Wii.
So Wii, I think, is really interesting because it's all like we on the show previously have referred to Wii games as their own series.
Right. So there's that category for sure.
Where it's like Wii Sports, Wii Play. But then
yeah, they're like generally like motion based, accessible games where you're playing as Mii characters, right?
Right.
Like those are sort of the three components of every Wii game, even though they're very different, right? Like Wii Play, Wii Sports, Wii Music, Wii Fit, they're all very different games.
Mm-hmm. But they all they all mean something where it's like this is a game for everybody.
Right. Yes.
But what we did, and then you do have games that have Wii in the title that denote like this is the Wii entry, like Mario Kart, for example,
or New Super Mario Brothers Wii.
But then you New Super Mario Brothers is its own kind of like crazy thing.
We'll talk about it.
But then you also have exceptions to both these rules, where like Super Mario Galaxy. There's no mention of the Wii in there that like this is the Wii entry in the Super Mario series.
Right, which is just like it's just funny.
Yeah.
All right, moving on from Wii.
Yes.
So next is just a 3D or 3DS, which generally like if a game was remade for the 3DS, it's just called like whatever 3D, right? So we got that with Star Fox 64 3D, Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D. I'm sure there are other examples, but like those are the three like big ones that come to mind. And it's just like if they were to re-release those games now on Switch, they would almost certainly call them HD.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
But 3D itself shows up in the names of a couple different games on 3DS. Super Mario 3D Land, Super Smash Brothers for 3DS. What do you make of those, Mark? What does the 3D or 3DS mean?
Well, so I think it's interesting that it's like Super Smash Brothers for 3DS.
Right.
Right? Because and it's Super Smash Brothers for Wii U,
right?
Which we'll get to. But like that to me feels like a different beast. That feels more like Nintendo Switch 2 edition.
Yes, I agree with that. And especially because they were making was essentially the same game for two different systems. And so they just like crammed in the name of the system.
But Super Mario 3D Land, I think is
how annoying would it have been if they had like given them two different names?
It would have been awful.
That were just like strange little, and you had to be like, okay, which one of these sounds more handheld?
Well, especially now that everybody just basically refers to them as Smash 4.
Right, yes.
Super Mario 3D Land is interesting to me because you have the Super Mario part of it telling you this is a Mario platformer.
Right.
And then you have like
land.
Then you have land, but then this 3D part of it, when it gets a pseudo sequel on the Wii U, is like, oh, that modifier in the place that it's at says this is this type of Mario game, this like isometric
Right.
view type thing that who knows if they'll ever revisit.
Right, but Super Mario 3D is the series, right?
But it means totally like, well, I guess maybe it doesn't. I feel like on the 3DS,
Yeah.
like there are actually uses for the 3D screen.
Right.
But then when it
right.
makes the transition to the Wii U, that Super Mario 3D, like you said, takes on a different meaning where it's just like,
Right.
this is this type of game.
Right. Yes, totally. And the fact that both land and world have their own specific meanings that we'll get to in a little bit is just another like it's a real like mind-blowing thing of just like I can't there are all of these and it's all stuff that's reliant on like by the time and I think we should also talk about like the like plus whatever, but by the time Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury comes along, that's an impenetrable title unless you have 30 years of Nintendo.
Yeah, that's the
naming
thing that's
history.
so funny is that like like without parsing Super Mario 3D Land, I still feel like the name means like very specific things to me.
Totally.
Just on like impact. That name arrived and I'm like, okay. Like I know what this is.
Yes. Totally agree. Should we move on to U?
Yeah.
Or Wii U, Wii U and U. So new Super Mario Brothers U. Interesting that it drops the although I guess the new Super Mario Brothers series naming convention never really makes any sense, right?
Right, because there's a 2 is just 2. There's no like 3DS or
Isn't
3D.
it also the third entry? Because Wii comes out first?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, it is kind of like all over the place.
Okay, so new Super Mario Brothers U and Super Luigi U, which drops the new insanely enough.
It is funny like that the U doesn't like mean anything in the way that like it represents the system, but there's nothing in the game that is like a feature that's all about you. It's not like that Time magazine like person of the year cover.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Where it's like there's nothing in the game that reflects your identity really.
Right.
Or like you in any unique sort of way.
Sure. I get that. It also doesn't necessarily promise like special like gamepad functionality, right? Like,
right.
Except when Ubisoft did it with Zombie U.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And it's not that there wasn't gamepad functionality in like new Super Mario Brothers U.
It's just not what makes that entry different or special.
Right.
So yeah, Wii Fit U, Wii Party U, Super Smash Brothers for Wii U. It is maybe like the least defined of
totally
these system specific.
Nintendo didn't even seem that interested. Like, I think the fact that Nintendo called Mario Kart 7 and Mario Kart 8 just the numbers and they're the only ones. It's same with Smash Brothers 4 whatever. It just feels like they threw their hands up a little bit.
Yeah, they're like we don't know on this one.
Right.
I'm sorry.
We don't trust people to be able to differentiate between DS and 3DS enough.
Right. And I like also that like there are certain series that never fall victim to this, right? Like Zelda, like Metroid. They're never named for the system.
Other than Super Metroid.
But
you're right. Not, I don't think it's named for the system so much as it's named for that promise that we talked about.
Totally.
Of being like the best version of Metroid.
But you're right to call out that one. Next, let's move on to Switch. There aren't really examples of this, but I did just want to shout out 1-2-Switch and everybody 1-2-Switch. Hilarious. Nintendo's most successful system lends its name to two of its least successful games.
Yeah. There's no even like attempt at wordplay in a Mario Party title or anything like that.
No, it's
like Mario Party Switch It Up or like there's nothing like that.
Totally. Right. Yeah, even like the WarioWare games are like, no, we're going to do something different.
Yeah. Oh, cuz one thing I guess like we didn't mention in the Wii era, there was like the what was it? when they would bring GameCube games over, like
yeah, they're called new play control.
New play controls, not Wii play controls.
Right.
Okay, got it.
And I left the new play controls out of here because there weren't that many, right? It was Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, the 2 Pikmin games, and
tennis. I think there was like
yeah,
a tennis
that's
game.
right. It was the Mario tennis game, which like cool. Glad they brought those games forward, but like yeah, new play control specifically meant GameCube games getting Wii controls.
Yeah, that reminds me. What were Pikmin 1 and 2 when they were released on Switch? What?
It's just called Pikmin 1 plus Pikmin 2.
Okay.
Or you could buy them separately.
Yeah.
But I mean, an interesting part of that renaming is that Pikmin is now called Pikmin 1.
Oh, yeah,
obviously,
right,
when it was released, it was just called Pikmin.
Yeah.
But now they're like, no, that game is called Pikmin 1. The title screen says Pikmin 1.
Oh, really? The title screen, they
Yeah.
changed it? Wow. They New Hoped it.
They definitely New Hoped it. That's right. And then, of course, we mentioned at the top of the show, Nintendo Switch 2 edition, which we will be seeing on the new releases.
Yes, which brings us such elegant titles as Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Nintendo Switch 2 edition, plus Starcross World.
It's it's I don't even know what to do with that. Do you want to but before we move into like the Nintendo specific terms, just address the plus whatever?
Sure, yeah, let's do that.
So you just mentioned the plus Starcross Worlds. We see this a lot in, mentioned Bowser's Fury earlier. But in the Mario and Luigi games, there was the like plus
Bowser's Inside Story.
Well, no, Bowser's Inside Story was
the thing.
Right?
Yeah, it's
plus,
like Bowser Jr.'s
Journey.
Yeah, something like that.
Or Bowser's Minions, maybe. And that's what's crazy is sometimes it's the promise of an additional game that sucks, and sometimes it's an additional game that rules.
But it is the promise of an additional game.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to like access separately and is like a totally different gameplay experience.
Yes. Yeah. That makes me think when they did, what was it? What was the Wii Kirby game that also had the Magalore content?
Oh, yes.
It was Return to Dreamland, Nightmare in Dreamland?
It might have been Return to Dreamland Deluxe.
Return to Dreamland. Just gonna bear with me while I look it up.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, what a yes. Okay, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Okay, so interesting. This didn't even have the mention of
it's
the Magalore stuff.
I mean, it maybe didn't as part of its title, but I would believe that was like on the, and maybe that's just covered by the Deluxe.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mark.
Yes. Now we get into the Nintendo specific terms.
Right. So we've already kind of talked about Super. I have that as the first entry here, but obviously we need to talk about that with Super NES. Let's cut to the heart of it. Let's talk about World.
Okay.
So World doesn't get thrown around a ton, right? But Super Mario World.
I almost feel like we need to talk about Land before we can talk about World, because I feel like they build on each other.
Sure. Okay.
Because you had like,
you're right.
You had like Super Mario Land before you had Super Mario World.
So Super Mario Land is, of course,
the like Game Boy launch title that
Right.
was the first Game Boy entry in the Super Mario series.
Right. And it's sort of like the hallmark of it is like it necessarily has to be smaller, kind of a simpler experience.
Yes, I feel like when you hear Land now, it's like this is the handheld version. Or
Yes.
this is the you're gonna get something a little bit different when you're in a Land game.
Right. And so, obviously like the Donkey Kong Country games got Land versions that were like the handheld versions of those. Wario Land is like Wario's platformer gets birthed on the Game Boy and spends most of its life in handheld. Right, except for Virtual Boy's not really a handheld; it's in between. And then Wario Land, Shake It on the Wii.
Yes,
but otherwise, they're all handheld games.
Yep. So I feel like Land is saying, here's the kind of like weird experience, a little diversion from what you're used to, like,
but still the same thing, right?
Yeah, a flavor of the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's a different flavor of the same thing. Do you know what I mean?
No.
I think, okay, that like Super Mario Brothers to Super Mario Land, it's the same kind of game.
Sure. Yes, there are mushrooms. You're jumping. It's a
Right.
platformer. Yeah, totally.
You throw little bouncy balls around and
Uh-huh.
you're fighting sphinxes. But it is not. It's just like a smaller version of it.
Yes, and I think the smaller,
Right.
is
We're
like
doing
is-
things with our fingers right now to indicate smaller.
It's helping us.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Might be hurting. We don't know.
I think that's a good point, because then we can turn to World and what
Yes.
having World in the title, starting with Super Mario World, like the promise of that.
Right. And there aren't really too many World games, right? Like there's Super Mario World, there is Wario World, there is Pushmo World, which is a bigger version of Pushmo. Wario World is like a 3D version of Wario Land, and now we've got Mario Kart World.
And I think the most direct corollary in my mind is from Super Mario World to Mario Kart World.
Yes.
Because I think what Nintendo is telegraphing to us with that name is like, this is a similar leap in ambition, a similar leap in
I agree.
how big the world is, of the game,
Right,
for you
the
to
gameplay space.
Yeah,
Yes.
like the playground of this game is something that you have never experienced in a Mario Kart title before.
Do you think this is something expressly borrowed from Disney?
Like going from land to world?
Yes.
That is interesting.
Because Disneyland is the original here in Anaheim, and it is obviously a smaller park than World. World is many things, right? It's many parks like built on top of each other, and just like takes up more space, is much more expansive. But like I don't like Disneyland to me doesn't have the same sort of diminutive quality that like Mario Land does, even though I know it's smaller than World.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I wonder if that is part of where the naming comes from.
Right.
Because you're right, like Disneyland is like the smaller, quainter, cuter version.
Right.
And then World is all of that blown up in scale.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So like, and when Nintendo starts opening their own like theme parks within the Universal Studios, they are Super Nintendo
World.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like where are they taking these cues from,
Right.
And when are we gonna get Super Mario Epic Universe? Right. Okay. So we've covered World, we think, and Land.
Yeah, I think so. World, we're basically saying like, yes, the promise of this series on a scale you've never experienced before.
Okay, great. Let's talk about new.
Okay, so we obviously have the examples of new Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But
those are the big ones.
But yes, and then we've also seen examples of like new Pokemon Snap.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yoshi's New Island.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that's not new Yoshi's Island. Maybe just because they thought it sounded bad. Because it does.
New Yoshi's Island does sound bad. The Yoshi games are named strangely. We didn't mention Yoshi's Woolly World. I feel like it doesn't. The world moniker doesn't apply to it.
Yeah.
Even though it's the last word in the title.
Right, but I would say for new, what was the last example that you gave?
Yoshi's New Island.
Yeah, I feel like that is one of those where the title does not apply in the same way. It's just a word. Right? It's not saying that it's like a new version of Yoshi's Island. It's just saying like what is on the tin. It's Yoshi's New Island. Because I think there's an example here in jumping ahead a little bit in Returns where it means two different things.
Right. Well, yeah, and we'll get to Returns.
So that's
in a
what
second.
I mean.
Yes.
Where like new, I think there's new Super Mario Brothers, which obviously is like this is a version of like this that is completely different. Right. We're reintroducing this.
It's completely different, but it's again like Land. It's still like it's the original thing, but a different take on it, right?
Yeah, it's like a reintroduction.
Yes. I'm gonna throw a wrinkle in here.
Okay.
New Nintendo 3DS.
I mean, I think it's saying the same. I would argue it's saying the same thing as Super Mario Brothers, where it's like, here is Super Mario Brothers reinvented, but all the core elements
That's
are
a good
there.
point.
Here's the Nintendo 3DS, but reinvented, but like all the core elements are there.
And it's sort of just like the new, or it's sort of the super of the 2000s.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Like
yeah.
they had already used super and applied super as the prefix to all of their games. And they were like, we need another one of these. We need a super that works for right now.
Especially for Mario Brothers, right? Where it's
Totally.
already Super Mario Brothers.
Yes.
So
And they're not about to lose that. So
right. So like, yeah, how do we indicate that it's a reinvented version of Super Mario Brothers?
right.
New.
Interesting that I mean, and you mentioned new Pokemon Snap, which like feels like an example out of that timeline, and
Totally, where they're
I
just
don't
like
know what Pokemon. We can't possibly understand what the heck is happening with those games.
But I
right?
do think yeah. No, you're right. You're
It
right.
is definitely pulling from that new though.
Right, and there's even an example. Yeah, I think so. But it's funny that there's another Pokemon example that we'll get to in the future that like they could have used new for, but they chose not to.
Yes, great point. And then also just wanted to tag here for a second. The two most recent Animal Crossing games are New Leaf and New Horizon.
Huh.
And those are like, I almost wonder if new in the Animal Crossing sense means like this is the relevant version of this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that's the intention or maybe just like an added bonus. Because to me, it feels like a piece of what Animal Crossing is in an experience where it's like you are a character who is starting a new life. And so having that word
Sure.
directly in, especially like new leaf, where that's a term that people
Turning over a
use.
new leaf.
So I
But-
feel like yeah.
But you don't think that New Horizon and New Leaf are like intentionally connected title wise? That the word new only appears in those two Animal Crossing game titles.
I mean, no, I that could absolutely be the case where they're like, let's carry that through. Yeah. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting.
And this isn't in our list here, but it was DLC for New Horizons, but like a whole new game on the 3DS as sort of like a sister game to New Leaf, Happy Home Designer and Happy Home Paradise. That like Happy Home for Animal Crossing means the sort of get to decorate villagers' houses however you want.
Right.
The sort of like creative suite with the Animal Crossing tools.
Right. That like Happy Home is the franchise.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. And sometimes the specific entry is designer, and sometimes it's paradise.
Right.
But only for the entries that have new in there. Do you know what I mean? Okay, great. Moving on. The next term we have here is All-Star. There aren't too many of these.
Yeah, really reserved for mostly for like the Mario games, right? With the Mario collections.
Isn't your favorite Kirby game, or is that Superstar?
I think that's Superstar.
Okay. Yeah, great. So yeah, it's really just and so maybe we need to also investigate Superstar. But All Stars is really just for collections of Mario games.
Yeah, and it means two different things. Like on the Super Nintendo, Mario All Stars are basically remakes, with different physics and all that kind of stuff. And then on the 3D All Stars is
kind of just a representation.
Yeah,
of them.
but just like a collection with some niceties added, but it's not like they remade the games or anything.
Still waiting for my new Super Mario Brothers All Stars, where they just do them all in the style of New Super Mario Brothers U. And you don't even have to include that one because it's already playable on Switch. But just collect the other three that way. Adventure. So examples of games that have adventure in the title: Kirby's Adventure, that's the first NES one. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Star Fox Adventures is another one.
Yeah. It's hard. I find it difficult to...
It's tough to draw a commonality between them. Yeah.
I mean, I guess so because...
Four Swords Adventure, I guess is
right, because like Star Fox Adventure, in that instance, it feels like denoting that this game is a departure from the Star Fox that you know. But like Kirby's Adventure, that doesn't really like fall into that at all.
Right, because it's just like a bigger version of it. So yeah, I don't know. I maybe adventure is a word that doesn't mean any one specific thing in Nintendo titles. All right, Excite. Maybe this is really more of just a series. Excite Bike 64. There's another 64. Excite Truck, Excite Bots.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like because like Excite bots, the Excite truck. I guess it just tells you this is going to be a racing game.
Yeah, I guess. Is that what Excite Bots is?
I assume
Okay, great.
because it has the Excite fixture in it.
Let's talk about another one here that could very well just be a series, but I would be interested to see it apply to other franchises. Paper.
Yeah, this one I do think is probably more just a series title.
Yes.
Like it is part of this franchise, and you know it because it has paper in the title.
What do you make of? So obviously, Paper Mario is a RPG series, sort of spun off of the original Mario RPG, and as a separate path to the Mario and Luigi games. What do you make of Super Paper Mario as far as naming conventions are concerned?
Well, I think that's to tell us like, hey, this is like the platformy one.
Yeah, that's a great point. Super Paper Mario and Super Princess Peach really do nail down the idea that like super can mean the platformy one.
Yeah.
It's well observed, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay, moving on to Deluxe.
Yes.
Now this is interesting. So you have Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, but different from definitive versions, right?
Uh-huh.
And because like Pikmin 3 Deluxe, I would argue could also be called Pikmin 3 Definitive Edition.
And ditto Mario Kart 8 could be called Mario Kart 8 Definitive Edition, but Super Mario Brothers Deluxe should not be called Definitive Edition.
Right.
That's the Game Boy Color version of Super Mario Brothers, which like maybe has more levels or like who cares? It's like not the ideal way to play Super Mario Brothers. But you can on Nintendo Switch Online. Deluxe is definitely one of those where, and you and I were trying to decide, do we put this down here in the Nintendo specific terms, or is this an industry wide term?
But we couldn't really think of another example of Deluxe being used to indicate
Right.
here's a improved version of
Right.
the
Or a somehow modernized version.
Yes, that's not definitive, and it's not a remaster, and it's not HD. It's just like
Right.
we went in there. I mean, because I really think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the perfect title for that game.
Sure.
It is like Mario Kart 8 dolled up.
Absolutely. Mario Kart 8, we collected all the things together and made it a little bit nicer. And also, don't tell anyone now when we release it, but 5 years from now, we're going to add 48 additional tracks.
Right. Yeah, this is one that I feel like we need a few more examples from Nintendo to really
I think you're right.
understand what they mean by it.
Do you think we ever get more of these? Because like 8 Deluxe is such a, and obviously they did Pikmin 3 after it, but 8 Deluxe is such a, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is such a like definitive statement on like, can you really do a game more deluxe than this?
Right.
It's sort of the Smash Brothers Ultimate thing where it's like, yeah, you did it.
No, that's true. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is almost like a statement of intent.
Yes.
It's interesting to me, like looking at Pikmin 3 Deluxe as an example. It's interesting that Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze wasn't a deluxe.
That should be a deluxe.
I feel like
or a definitive edition.
Or a definitive edition.
Right.
But it's not. It's its own weird funky edition and or no, is that even right? Or is it just
It's just called Tropical Freeze.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That game just got a repackaging, no
new name.
No new name at all.
Yep. Hey, Nintendo does what they want to do. Let's talk returns. Samus Returns / The Return of Samus, the two different versions of Metroid 2. Donkey Kong Country Returns, Kirby's Return to Dreamland, Detective Pikachu Returns.
Now, I think Return to Dreamland is the outlier here, and this is the one same with like Yoshi's New Island.
Yes.
Where I think that this does not mean what the other means. Like Samus Returns, Donkey Kong Country Returns, Detective Pikachu Returns. Also, Detective Pikachu Returns is interesting. I don't know enough about the game. Is it,
it's a sequel to
I
Detective
know,
Pikachu,
but I just don't know if it's like plot if the name is plot driven.
I see what
where
you're
like
saying,
at
right.
the end of the first game,
He went
Detective
away.
Pikachu, right, like walks off into the sunset, and so he returns in this one.
Right. Well, I think what it's really referring to is the like the corruption of Detective Pikachu's father in the first one.
Oh, sure.
Even though he had been Detective Pikachu way back in a series of movies that we haven't seen yet.
Yes, of
and
course.
that by the end of Detective Pikachu Returns, his son is reclaiming his father's soul for him.
Yeah, no, that makes the most sense.
Uh-huh.
But I think with Samus Returns, maybe it's really just Donkey Kong Country Returns. I think that one's straight up like, hey, Donkey Kong's back, and we could have called this New Donkey Kong Country,
Right.
but it's more continuation
Yeah,
than anything else.
So Donkey Kong Country Returns and Detective Pikachu Returns are both like they're sequels to like a game or franchise that you'd kind of been like, that's probably done, right? The country games, that's probably the Donkey Kong we're gonna get. Detective Pikachu, that was probably a one-time thing,
Right?
and like so, the returns in that context just means like, oh,
How
here's a new
dare
entry.
you doubt us?
Right? How dare you doubt us? And now we're back. Kirby's Return to Dreamland. That's like a remake of Kirby's Dreamland, right?
Oh, I actually don't know. That could be.
The Kirby games are, and they're because they've been re-released and like kind of repackaged so many times that I lose track of what is going on with them.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're like having a nightmare in Dreamland or
Right.
like we already looked up the Switch one and I forgot what the title is already. That is Return to Dreamland, right?
Epic Yarn. I don't know.
But yeah, what do you make of Returns? What do you make of?
Yeah, I mean, I think Returns. First of all, it's interesting how frequently it is just pegged to a character, right? Samus Returns, Donkey Kong Returns, Pikachu Returns, Detective Pikachu. And I think that's maybe just like a function of the way that word works. But yeah, it generally has to be like a sequel of some kind,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And usually a 2, right? Samus Returns is number 2. Donkey Kong, I guess, defeats that, but the Detective Pikachu is a 2.
What? This is not directly related, but what do you make of when they remade Return of Samus from a Game Boy game to a 3DS game that they decided to change the title instead of have it be Return of Samus? Just that they were like, that sounds bad, and we don't want to use Return of Samus anymore. We're just going to call it Samus Returns.
But that's crazy too, right? Because it's like not the point of the game isn't that Samus returns, right? Like it could be like a Metroid 2. I was gonna say Metroid Hunter, but that's bad.
Well, I mean, okay,
Well,
let's
or
look
like
at
Metroid 2 Evolution or something like that, because like the Metroids evolve and you're
Right.
like exterminating them. And Metroid 2 Extermination, like they could have named it anything, but they kept the name of the character in the subtitle.
right.
And that's the only place where her name does appear, right?
Well, maybe that's because they were sick of people calling her Metroid.
Maybe, right. There you go. Yeah, so it's maybe a little bit of like a Zoda's Revenge.
Except people
Star Tropics
care.
2.
Do you think that, and I don't know the timeline here, but like, because Batman Returns,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously Batman Returns was decades before they changed the title to
yes,
Samus Returns.
right.
But Batman Returns, at the end of the first Batman movie, is he retired? I honestly can't remember.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's just that's what they wanted to call a sequel, and maybe somebody at
Yeah,
and Nintendo's a big Batman fan, so they're
Well-
like, all right, we have a chance to redo this,
and I guess
so we're
it's
going to.
like in movies like the Pink Panther Returns or Return of the Pink Panther. What is the name of that movie?
I've never
Doesn't
seen
matter.
any of those movies.
Superman Returns.
Uh-huh.
Obviously we made a joke about Return of the Jedi. That is just kind of it's a good sequel word.
Yeah, maybe Return of the Jedi is a good touch point because we know that the Metroid games love their kind of like sci-fi fantasy references.
Yeah, it's
so-
true. So Metroid 2 should have just been called Metroids,
Yeah, that's right.
and like is actually appropriate. All right. So our final little bit of terminology is less a term and more a use of punctuation. It is the single exclamation point versus 2 exclamation points. Nintendo does not have games where there are 3 exclamation points, one right after another. But Princess Peach Showtime has exclamation point.
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of the WarioWare games do Move It, Get It Together, Twisted.
See, okay, actually,
But not all of them. Smooth Moves does not.
right. That's true. But because I do feel like WarioWare, Move It, Get It Together, Twist It, maybe not Twisted, but like Move It and Get It Together, like those are things that you would yell at somebody.
True, but the name of the first WarioWare game is Mega Micro Games Inc., and that has an exclamation point at the end of it too.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you would never...
because I was gonna say like Showtime, that is something that you would yell
if you're Beetlejuice.
Now that is a Princess Peach game that would have been worth playing. But your 2 exclamation point example, and I think the only one is Punch Out.
Right, but that is the name of that series, is Punch Out, Punch Dash Out, exclamation point, exclamation point.
And I have a theory about this. Because there's 2 fists. So punch, punch. So 2 exclamation marks.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. It's inassailable logic. I love it.
There's something that brings me a lot of joy that Punch Out has 2 exclamation points.
Yes,
like
I agree.
I really like that styling for whatever reason.
It's so cute. It's just like I like that arms is always capitalized. That's just something that brings me joy. I'm curious now. The arm wrestling arcade game that is like a spin-off of Punch Out. How is that stylized?
Oh yeah, that is a good question.
I'm Googling it now.
I'm gonna guess no exclamation points at all.
You're correct. No exclamation points at all.
Because I feel like in that era, they also just loved to call things what they were. This is golf. This is tennis, right? It's not like NES golf. It's not Famicom golf. It's just like, this is arm wrestling.
Right.
Enjoy.
And arm wrestling is not hyphenated, even though Punch Out is. All right. Are there any other, as we've been talking through this, are there any other words that we've encountered that you're like, you know what, maybe that tells us something about a Nintendo game?
Do you disagree with any of our interpretations?
Yeah, if you do, email us, Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com.
And we'll get to the bottom of all of this at some point, right?
Yeah, like who exactly is returning from what in Detective Pikachu?
Yeah. And when are they going to explore his twin sister? She's got a role to play in this, I'm sure. All right, Mark, let's close this out. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Hey, thanks for listening. I had a blast talking about this stuff.
Yes. Thank you for listening. And if you were attempting to get a pre-order today, hope that went well for you.
Or hope that it can still go well for you if you're going to GameStop.
That's
and
right.
Are listening to this before GameStop's open. Maybe you're listening to it in line at your GameStop. Say hi to the other people there. But like not in a weird way, like in a friendly way.
You'll know what to do. Feel it out.
Yes, feel it out.
We trust you.
Okay, well, we trust some of you. Thank you so much to our 60-minute patrons, Connor McKay, Patrice Millette, Kyle Seaborn, Drew Mackey, and Steve-O. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who's listening to this, whether you're in line at a GameStop or not. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Email us, Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. We'll send you an invite. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, new Mark Mitchell, this is Super Patrick Eller saying thank you for listening.
New Mark Mitchell is like, nobody loves the look of me, but they can't deny that the mechanics are solid.
See, I was going to say that we introduce the new Mark Mitchell, and then we take it off the market and reintroduce Mark Mitchell Classic. People remember that they always loved Mark Mitchell.
That's right. I'm sassier when I'm new Mark Mitchell.